Coming up next, another episode of Hot Off the Bench. Well, hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is another episode of Hot Off the Bench, and since this is the second year of doing this on my channel, I'm going to call this Year 2, Episode 1, and this is February of 2022. Alright, so I took a nice break here from model building. As I mentioned, I was going to do that at the end of the year, and so it was nice to do that, reorganize a few things on the bench, but also was able to do some oil painting, and that's my latest painting right there. You probably recognize that scene. I'll go into more detail into that painting here shortly. But before we get started with our slideshow, I wanted to make an announcement also that my friend Ken Spriggs is going to join us on occasion here, and what he's going to be is our new Kit Correspondent. And what brought this to mind is the recent enthusiasm about the Razor Crest that was released by Revell Germany. And I know this kit's supposed to be basically sold in Europe only, so there was some limited supplies here in the US. I know Cult TV Man had a very limited supply that sold out fairly quickly, but there's been a lot of interest in this kit because of the level of detail it includes, and Ken got a hold of one, so he's going to fill us in on what he thinks about that kit. Alright, so let's get started with our slideshow. As usual, I have some fabulous models to show you. So we're going to kick off our slideshow here with some excellent builds from the Star Trek universe. First off is this build from Kenny Multa of the original series bridge. Kenny not only built the bridge itself, but also surrounded it with an outer hull. The bridge is beautifully painted and detailed. For added accuracy, he included photo-etched parts from Paragraphics, and for painting the project, he used Testors and Tamiya paints. Kenny designed his own lighting systems, which includes this effect you see here with the lights under the main screen. This was accomplished by using varied resistors. In these pictures, you can see how he built the outer hull, first by constructing a wooden frame, which was then surrounded with fiberglass, followed by shaping and refining with Bondo. Just an outstanding job here, Kenny. Thanks for giving us a look at this amazing build. And next up is a really nice replica of the next generation Type 15 shuttle pod by modeler Anthony Lang. This actually is a scratch build that is 1/25th in scale and was constructed from styrene sheet with an acrylic front window, but he used resin to cast the nacelles and front seat. Anthony says he was first inspired by a 1996 issue of Fine Scale Modeler magazine, which featured plans to build the shuttle pod. He modified those plans to make the surface details more accurate using reference photos. The Picard is a Galoob figure which he repainted. He had read that these figures were 1/25 in scale and started building the pod before its arrival. Unfortunately, the figure turned out to be 1/20th according to his estimates, so he recommends waiting to receive it before starting the build if you try this out. This is a very nice replica of the ship, Anthony. Thanks for sending these pictures. And by the way, if you're interested, Anthony provided a link to a reference article he found helpful, and it's listed below. And next we have the Polar Lights 1-1000 USS Voyager built by modeler Bill Krause. He went all out with painting, weathering, and lighting to create a beautiful replica of Voyager. The model is molded in translucent plastic, which really helps for lighting windows. And in this picture you can see how Bill masked all of those windows to achieve that effect. Now I saw the prototype of the kit at Wonderfest, and it's a pretty nice model. It actually even gives you the option of attaching the landing gear, allowing one to display it in the landed configuration. Really nice job here, Bill. Thanks for allowing me to share this. Up next is this amazing 1/350 scale of the Enterprise with battle damage, built by modeler Ray Vaughn. To create the repair plates, Ray used clear plastic and paid close attention to reference photos to duplicate the look of the filming miniature. You can also see how the model features all of the rest of the surface details like the Aztec paneling. And Ray is an artist who mixes his own paints to achieve the look he wants. Beautifully done here, Ray. Thanks for sharing. And here we have a very unique piece from modeler Brian Hurd. It is a replica of Space Dock. This is a 3D printed model that Brian found on eBay, and the pieces were printed in translucent PLA. He used an X-Acto knife to create the horizontal and vertical lines to represent all of the tiny windows. To light the space dock, he used a string of rice lights, and he did install running blue lights, for which he used eyelash LEDs, which I'd never heard of before. Absolutely amazing. And here you can see how Brian used his model to create an image with the Enterprise. Really nice work, Brian. I'll be featuring another unique piece from him in an upcoming slideshow. Thanks for sharing. So let's move on now to the Space 1999 universe, and we have two replicas of Moonbase Alpha to show you. The first is from modeler Boyd from TrekWorks. He did an incredible job with not only assembling the kit, but doing something I rarely see. He lit all of the buildings and eagle pads. Now, I've actually built this kit, and the buildings are very small, so you can imagine making windows would be a challenge. Boyd, however, tackled this with what he calls a paint and scrape method. This is done by taking a fine pick and scraping away small rectangles and squares after painting the base coat. The buildings are then lit with strip LEDs. If you want to know more about this build, you can follow along on his channel. The link to part 1 is below. Fantastic job, Boyd. And here is the same model kit done by two builders, Tony and Alfonso. The two brothers were inspired by Boyd's project, actually, and I thought I'd give you and Boyd a chance to see what resulted from his inspiration. The lunar surface was reinforced by gluing pieces of foam board, and Alfonso primed the surrounding mountains with gray primer and the central crater with black. The buildings were sprayed with white primer, then accented with various shades of off-white and cream colors. They used a Gorilla Glue pen to attach all of the pieces to the base, and then followed this by more weathering and detailing. The entire piece was then mounted into a wooden 18 by 18 inch frame, and they decided at this point to omit the eagles because they felt that they couldn't do a satisfactory job painting them. In the end, this made a beautiful replica of the base. Really nice job, guys. I know Boyd would be very proud of your build here. Just outstanding. And let's go on to the Star Wars universe with this 172 Perfect Grade Falcon by modeler Dean Arnold. Dean started with a black primer followed by pastels, and this resulted in the multiple shades of gray you see here. Dean meticulously detailed the ship, as you can see, and did a fine job with this amazing kit. Dean told me he's a model restoration and repair volunteer for the Naval War College Museum in Newport, Rhode Island, which has allowed him to work on a variety of models, ranging from large warships, sailing ships, and even a 15th century Korean turtle boat. It's no wonder his Falcon looks exceptional. Dean is a longtime sci-fi modeler and has been building Star Trek, Galactica, and Star Wars models since the 1980s. Thank you, Dean. I'd love to visit that museum sometime. Next, we have a model that is all the rage currently. It is the Revell 172 Razor Crest, and this was done by modeler Barry Ford. The kit is nicely detailed, as you can see here, and Barry used Vallejo metal color applied over various shades of primers. Here's a picture of the cockpit, and from what I've seen, the model also has quite the detailed aft section interior too, and I think it's the detailing in that aft section that is going to distinguish it from the Round 2 kit. Barry did a wonderful job with it, as you can see. Really nice, Barry. Thank you for showing us your work. And to finish off our slideshow is a brief visit to the Lost in Space universe with this chariot from modeler Dale Morris Stringer. This is the 1/24th scale Mobius Models kit that Dave purchased from CultTVMan.com. He used the lighting kit from Voodoo FX along with the Paragraphics Photo Etch kit, aftermarket figures, and as you can see, he articulated the wheels and track. The model is displayed on a beautiful custom base. Really cool build, Dave. Thanks for allowing me to share it on the show. And again, some amazing work there, so thank you guys for sending those pictures. If you'd like to have your model included in a slideshow this year, just send them on to ismslideshow@gmail.com. That's ismslideshow@gmail. And what I'm hoping to do in March is to do a slideshow that's going to feature just dioramas. I'm going to do a couple others with a specific theme. So I thought I would start with dioramas. So if you have a really cool diorama you'd like to share, again, just send it on to ismslideshow@gmail.com. Well, I'm not completely done with the slideshow here. What I thought you'd enjoy seeing is a little feature here on the work of BP Taylor. BP is a modeler I first met at Wonderfest a few years ago, and what struck me the most about the stuff he had on display was that it was all scratch built. Back in December, I featured one of his models on the slideshow. It was the scratch built 2001 Orion, and so he was kind enough to send some more pictures here of 5 more projects. All of these are unique designs and scratch built. Let's go ahead and check it out. So first, let's take a look at a ship he calls Recon 1. It's a medium-range reconnaissance vehicle based in the Space 1999 universe. It incorporates the Eagle 1B command module. This is a kit that he mastered and produced. The body is then made up of ABS tubing, vacuum-formed shell kit parts, and resin castings. He used automotive paints and weathered with acrylic washes and pastels. The engine bells are metal and were made by machinist Mike Reeder. The model measures 16 inches in length. And moving on to what he calls the Hammerhead Shark Ship. This was designed by BP for Joe Reboy, who created a show called Captain Isotope and the Enemy of Space. Patterns for the main body were hand-carved from wren-shaped material and vacuum-formed out of ABS sheet. A lot of hand-scribing and applying small styrene repair patches created all of the details you see here. He says that detail recesses provide depth, break up the surfaces, and add another level of realism to the model. It was painted with metallic automotive sprays, and he used acrylic washes and pastels to weather it. The completed kit measures 19 inches in length. And onto the Centauri 1 probe ship. This model began as a crude sketch, and he improvised along the way. The model utilizes a variety of model-making techniques, including sheet fabrication, lathe turning and mill work, vacuum forming, silicone molding and casting, and kit bashing. Automotive paints were used again to finish the model, and he chose to do no weathering here because he wanted to depict a ship just heading out on its main voyage. This model measures 26 inches in length. And here we have the USS Starduster. He described this model as being a mashup of two classics, taking the original Alex Toth design for the Starduster from the animated series Space Angel and turning it into a United Federation of Planets starship. This project began with an extra set of castings of the Starduster, which he had previously mastered and produced as a kit. Various modifications were made to it, including the addition of warp nacelle caps and intercoolers, a rear shuttle bay, and a deployable deflector shield. The model was finished in automotive paints, and he used Aztec dummy paint masks to create the various panels. JT Graphics decals and custom dry transfers completed the model. The model was mounted on a custom display base, and it measures 17 inches in length. And lastly, we have a model that I saw at Wonderfest in person. He calls this the Alien Fighter in Docking Bay. Another improvised design, this Alien Fighter is shown docked in a maintenance bay. The body of the fighter again utilizes vacuum-formed ABS shells drawn over hand-carved wren-shaped patterns. The single engine is a urethane casting originally made for another project, and the wings are made with a material called Lexan that were decorated with additional layers of styrene sheet. The docking bay is comprised of two plates of 1/2 inch plexiglass, which was then scribed, plated, and then detailed with various kit parts and resin castings. The alien maintenance bay worker floating on a tether alongside the ship was made with epoxy sculpt and parts from a 1/35 scale figure. Painting was done with automotive paints, and weathering was applied in the form of chipping, thin washes of acrylic paint, and pastel streaking. This model has a 13-inch wingspan. So really just some amazing work. Thank you, BP, for sending those pictures. I really do appreciate you taking the time to do that. I'm sure you guys really enjoyed looking at those models. And by the way, I did ask BP how he comes up with these types of designs, and they just simply start off as a sketch on paper. And I've actually tried to do something like that. I've bought books on the subject, just really tried my hand at coming up with stuff, and nothing I ever comes up with looks right. Both him as well as another modeler, his name is Bill Krause. He's the guy who built the Voyager model on the slideshow this month. By the way, I did an interview with him a couple years ago. If you want to see some of his work, just check out the link below. But both these guys really talented at coming up with these types of ships that look like they can fly. It's a skill I truly admire. And by the way, I also want to mention that all of the models that he sent pictures of were all awarded the gold medal at Wonderfest, which is not an easy accomplishment. Definitely well deserved. Congratulations on that, BP. And thanks again for sending those pictures. I definitely look forward to seeing what you come up with for Wonderfest this year. All right, let's move on now to my oil painting here, which I'd like to share with you. So here we've got then a scene from Rigel 7, and this of course is based on the famous matte painting by an artist named Albert Whitlock, who did all of the matte paintings for the original series. Mr. Whitlock was quite the genius. I've been doing some reading about his work. He's done not only, of course, the mattes for Star Trek, but did
a number of films in Hollywood, so he's very famous for his work. And one of his pieces from the original series that always fascinated me was the castle from Rigel 7. Of course, this is seen in The Cage and was later also seen in the Menagerie as The Cage was re-edited into that episode. And I remember watching Star Trek as a kid, looking at this and just feeling how otherworldly it looked and what it must be like to be on an alien world. Of course, gave us a castle, which we're somewhat familiar, of course, with what castles look like, but then you see this big moon. Even a castle looks a bit different. There's a combination of different types of architecture there, but we had this big moon in the background with these distant hills, and it kind of just made you wonder what went on at this place. And so I was reading about Albert Whitlock's work and just inspired me to try, and this took about 2.5 weeks to complete. I plan on doing more sci-fi related paintings. I'm going to do more, maybe do a couple more Whitlock pieces and also some Ralph McQuarrie pieces, and eventually that will give me confidence to try my own composition. So that's my goal anyway. So if you have any questions about this, please leave a comment down below. Okay, well now it's time to get some news here from the sci-fi model world. We're going to be joined by my friend Ken Spriggs, who is our new Kit correspondent. He's going to fill us in on some new model releases. Ken?
Thank you, Augie. Yes, we have breaking news on the modeling front, and here to talk about some of our new models from your local hobby shop is our man in the field, Ken Modeler. Ken, what's going on right now with current models that are available? Well, yes, Ken, two really awesome kits from the Star Wars Mandalorian TV show have been released by Revell of Germany. The first one is the Razor Crest, which we have been waiting several years to get a large-scale model of that. The only other version was the really tiny Bandai version. This one is very large with a full interior, a cockpit, and a cargo bay, which you can see nicely from the back ramp and the two side ramps as well. Really nice kit. I was able to get one. They are only available in Germany unless you can get one that was imported to a shop here in the US. I was able to get one from Cult TV Man, paid a little over $100 for it, and then I ended up buying a second one that I got from a company in England. And with the shipping, I still ended up paying about $100, which I don't think is bad. It's a really, really awesome kit. They're just not available for sale here directly in the US. They're harder to get. But if you're okay with going out on eBay and purchasing one there, you can find several sources to have them shipped and get a copy of that. So, all right, and the second one is also from the show. It is the Outland TIE Fighter that Moff Gideon flew in the first season, and he landed it, and the wings fold down on the sides. I did not get a copy of that one, but let's go ahead and take a look at both of those models. All right, so first of all, here is the Razor Crest. As you can see, the box and a display of how it looks built. Really, really cool kit. Then here's the Outland TIE Fighter as well. This one I do not have, but I'm looking at images here. You can see how the wings fold and has legs, landing legs on it. And here's an image of it closer as a built chip. It looks as if the wings are able to be folded up and down. So it looks pretty cool as well. Well, those sound great, Ken. Isn't Round 2 also releasing a version of the Razor Crest in the same scale, 172? And I understand that theirs might not have a full interior. Can you give us more information on that? Well, I'm glad you asked, Ken. Yes, Round 2 announced at Wonderfest last year that they are also releasing a 172 scale version of the Razor Crest. Now, they didn't have any images of the actual model, but they did have a little display just talking about the details that it's going to have. And from their description, it's going to have opening doors and ramps on the back as well, but it's not going to have, it doesn't say it's going to have an interior in the cargo bay, which I think is a missed opportunity. Sort of like their shuttlecraft that they released from Star Trek, which is a great kit, but they did not release an interior. Now, they recently announced that they are going to be coming out with a version this year that has a full interior for the shuttlecraft, and also releasing the interior as a separate standalone model, which I believe is a limited edition also, which I want to pick up for my shuttlecraft. So I don't know if they're planning on doing that with the Razor Crest or not, but let's go ahead and take a look at the display that they had. And I got these images from Cult TV Man's website. All right, so here's the display that they had at Wonderfest. And Cult TV Man is saying a mid-2022 release date. And it's saying that it's going to have screen-accurate details. It's going to have cargo bay doors that can be opened and closed, landing gear that can be positioned up and down, and then a cockpit with figures of Mando and Grogu within it. But it doesn't mention any type of a storage area. And speaking of round two, a fan favorite, the Star Trek Grissom spacecraft, which previously was only released in a very tiny little version, is now out as a 1/350 scale. And it's a bigger ship, but it's still smaller compared to the other properties because the ship itself is a small ship compared to the Enterprise and other ships of its kind. But that is available now that you can pick up a copy of that. Let me go ahead and show you an image of that box art also. Yeah, so those are pretty cool kits coming out from round two. They're doing some really, really great things here in the future. So I understand that Mobius has a couple of offerings coming out here in the near future as well that are going to be from the 2001 property. And I know that you love those models there, Ken. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about those as well. Well, yes, Ken, I definitely am a big fan of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Built quite a few of their spaceships, and Mobius has been very, very faithful to that property and releasing models in recent years. They recently announced a large-scale version of the Ares 1B, very large, with a full interior, a cockpit, and a passenger section, and also a much larger version of the Space Clipper that has a full interior also of the cockpit and the passenger section. So let's go ahead and take a look at some images that they've released of some test shots of those models as well. And here is the box art for the Ares 1B, which is in a 1/48 scale. Looks really cool. Here's an image of the really nicely detailed passenger section with all the seats. Here is the roof with the detailed sections for the lights. And then images of the cockpit, which looks really cool. Look at the size of that. It's amazing. And then here's the box art for a 1/72 scale version of the Space Clipper, which is going to be very large. Kind of give you an idea. There's a person sitting next to it. Very large. These images are from Monsters in Motion. Here's an image of the highly detailed interior with all the passenger section, all the passenger seats, and then the cockpit for the Space Clipper as well. Very nicely done. All right, thank you, Ken. Well, that's all for us today in the studio for our breaking news. Back to you, Augie.
Well, thanks, Ken, for doing that. I really do appreciate it, and it's quite amazing you found an on-the-scene reporter that looks just like you. But I know we all look forward to seeing you in the future here on Hot Off the Bench with some more breaking news from the sci-fi model world. Well, now it's time to talk to you about a product that's going to help you out with model building. And what I'd like to show you are these little strainers that I've come across recently. They're sold under the name Resin Strainers on Amazon. A company called Jorest makes them. And for $10, you'll get 3 of these along with these silicone funnels to help direct the fluid that it is you're straining. Now, they're sold with the intention of using with your resin printer. Oftentimes, you'll have leftover resin in your vat that you need to get back in your bottle. And one thing that you should do, at least a good practice, is to strain it through something, and that's certainly one use of these. Now, recently I was on YouTube and I happened to come across a video that was that had to do with using craft paints in your airbrush, and I was really interested in looking at it because this is something that I've tried in the past. Now, there are a variety of reasons you want to use craft paints or that you might be interested in using craft paints, but one of the things that I have come across with using them, and why I have kind of not used them very often, is because I end up with a problem where the airbrush starts to sputter. And the reason that's happening is I'm really just not getting this to a fine enough mixture. Well, that's what this one YouTube video shows you. As a gentleman, his YouTube channel is called Paul's Railroad, and he shows you that if you thin the paints down and strain it through this, you can successfully use it in your airbrush. So check out the link below to his video, and again, the link to the product is also below. Now it's time to move on to the model tip, and I think what I'll do is I'll follow this through by showing you how this actually can work.
Alright, well I have some paints here on the bench to mix, and before we get started I want to make mention I did experiment a little bit with this before I recorded, and one of the things I tried first was alcohol to mix into the paints because that's what this gentleman uses. He does this because since alcohol evaporates faster, he feels he gets a lot more things done since it dries a lot faster. But when I tried alcohol with this particular paint, it really caused it to clump up really quickly, and it just made the paint unusable. It dried fairly quickly even in the little container I had it in. So rather than using alcohol, we're going to go ahead and use water. Now you can also use certainly airbrush thinner, which I've used in the past to mix these paints with, but I didn't want to use up a bunch of thinner here for this, so we're just going to use water. So I selected this craft paint and shook it well, placed it in this container, and added water, mixed it, added flow improver, and mixed it some more. Then I ran it through the filter. I placed it into the airbrush and set my PSI just a little higher, close to 20. And it worked just fine. Well, I have to say that I'm really happy that I ran across this video because it's, I think, going to help me out a lot here. So big thank you to Paul from Paul's Railroad. That is the name of the YouTube channel, and the video is called Airbrushing with Inexpensive Craft Paints. The link is below. And I think I'm going to use that filtering method not only with craft paints but also with Vallejo paints too. I tend to run across this issue with Vallejo paints, and perhaps that's because they sit for so long. No matter how hard I try to mix them, you know, I use this here and this here, I still end up with that issue, so maybe this extra step can help out. Well, I hope you found this helpful, and if you have anything to add here, feel free to leave a comment below. Alright, well that is a wrap for this Hot Off the Bench. I'll be back next month with another one. I wanted to share with you before I go, I've already started on my next oil painting. As I watched episodes 5 and 6 from the Boba Fett series, there was one view in particularly they had of Mando flying that new badass Naboo starfighter, and I absolutely just love that view. I was inspired to create a painting, so I'll be working on this. But I am also ready to start my next build, and that video will be coming up soon on the channel. And since I'm in the Star Wars mood, I'm going to kick off the years in the Star Wars universe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.